Welcome back, my friends. The news today is that Big Pharma faces huge patent cliffs, as Johnson & Johnson, Merck, and others prepare to lose heaps of revenue from blockbuster drugs. Big pharmaceutical companies like Bristol Myers, Squibb, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson face so-called patent cliffs that will put tens of billions of dollars in sales at risk between now and 2030. That refers to when patents expire for one or more leading branded products for a company, which opens up the door for competitors to sell copycats of those drugs, often at a lower price. Some companies appear to be well prepared to offset some of the losses from upcoming patent expirations. A pharmaceutical patent cliff is a term that describes the sharp decline in revenue or profitability that a drug company faces when its patents for one or more of its best-selling drugs expire. This allows generic drug makers to enter the market and compete with the original drug, often at a much lower price. This reduces the sales and market share of the original drug and can have a significant impact on the drug company's financial performance. For those of you not familiar, pharmaceutical patent cliffs are especially relevant for the biopharma industry, which relies heavily on innovation and research and development to create new drugs. However, developing new drugs is costly and risky, and it can take years to get approval from regulatory agencies. Therefore, drug companies need to recoup their investment and generate profits from their drugs before they lose their patent protection. Some of the factors that affect the duration and strength of patent protection include the type of drug, the country of origin, the regulatory exclusivity, and the legal challenges from competitors. But before we get into all of that, I would like to thank everyone who views my videos. If you would like to support the channel, please see the link to buy me a coffee in the video description below. And please hit the like button and leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Big pharmaceutical companies such as Bristol Myers Squibb, Merck, and Johnson & Johnson face a looming threat that will put tens of billions of dollars in sales at risk between now and 2030, as blockbuster drugs will tumble off a so-called patent cliff. That refers to when a company's patents for one or more leading branded products expire, which opens the door for competitors to sell copycats of those drugs, often at a lower price. That typically causes revenue to fall for drug makers and costs to drop for patients who can access more affordable options. Certain drug makers appear well prepared to offset some losses from upcoming patent cliffs as they build their drug pipelines and ink acquisitions or partnerships with other companies. Some Wall Street analysts said, patent cliffs are an unavoidable issue for pharmaceutical companies. They must replenish older top-selling drugs with new ones that they hope will not just sustain their sales, but also grow them. Some of the strategies that drug companies use to cope with patent cliffs include developing new drugs, extending the life cycle of existing drugs, diversifying their product portfolio, acquiring or partnering with other companies, and expanding into new markets. However, these strategies are not always successful or sufficient to offset the revenue loss from patent expirations. Therefore, drug companies need to constantly innovate and adapt to the changing market conditions and customer preferences. Some examples of blockbuster drugs that have faced or will face patent cliffs in the near future are the following. Keytruda, an immunotherapy drug that treats various types of cancer developed by Merck. It is expected to lose its patent protection in 2028, and its 2022 sales are estimated to be $20.94 billion, which accounts for roughly 36% of Merck's total sales. Eliquis, a blood thinner drug that prevents clotting and reduces the risk of stroke, developed by Bristol Myers Squibb. It is expected to lose its patent protection in 2026, and its 2022 sales are estimated to be $14.9 billion, which accounts for roughly 30% of Bristol Myers Squibb's total sales. Humira, an anti-inflammatory drug that treats various autoimmune diseases, developed by AbbVie. It lost its patent protection in the US in 2016 and in Europe in 2018, and its 2020 sales were $19.8 billion, which accounted for roughly 43% of AbbVie's total sales. The loss of exclusive rights on a drug can affect companies differently, depending on how much of their sales they get from the product or what type of treatment it is. Some drugs facing patent expirations will also be subject to the Biden administration's Medicare drug price negotiations, a policy that may further threaten the company's revenues. The top 20 biopharma companies have $180 billion in sales at risk from patent expirations between now and 2028, according to estimates from EY. It does differ by company at this stage, and I think there are a number of products in the 25-30 timeframe that will be major growth drivers for large biopharma companies. But all that in all, there are plenty of companies that have revenue holes to plug. William Blair and Company analyst Matt Phipps told CNBC, patent cliffs could differ depending on whether the product is a small molecule drug, meaning it's made of chemicals that have low molecular weight, or a biologic or a medicine derived from living sources such as animals or humans. Many of the biggest drugs facing upcoming patent expirations are biologics, including Merck's Keytruda, Johnson & Johnson's Stelara, and Bristol Myers Squibb's Opdivo. Those drugs will inevitably rake in less revenue, but it may take time before so-called biosimilars threaten their dominance. Investors will get updates on Merck and Bristol Myers Squibb's plans for the years ahead when they report earnings on Thursday and Friday, respectively. Phipps said biosimilars have historically had trouble gaining market share from their branded counterparts. That's unlike generics, which are cheaper copycats of small molecule drugs like Bristol Myers Squibb's Eliquis. The difference is that many biosimilars aren't identical copies of branded biologic drugs, while generics are. That means biosimilars are not interchangeable. Pharmacists can't directly substitute a branded biologic for a biosimilar when filling a prescription. Not all patients will react to a biosimilar in the same way as they do to a biologic, which makes some physicians more wary of switching patients to them. Biosimilars also cost much more to research and develop, and are more complex to manufacture than generics, making biosimilar makers less willing to sell them at significant discounts to branded counterparts, Phipps noted. One example is AbbVie's Humira, a biologic that helps treat an array of inflammatory diseases. Several biosimilars of Humira debuted on the market last year, but the drug has so far only lost 2% of its market share to those copycats, according to a report released this month by Samsung's biopharmaceutical subsidiary, Bioepis. That's partly because the drug maker has offered rebates on Humira to pharmacy benefit managers. Its lower price has cut revenue, but it is also helping the drug stay competitive. What's really impacted is not volume in the market, it's price, Piper Sandler senior analyst Christopher Raymond said. He added that Humira is a highly profitable drug, so AbbVie can set a lower price and still maintain a very decent margin. Still, AbbVie expects that Humira's revenue declined by 35% last year, compared to 2022, when the drug raked in more than $21 billion. Raymond forecasts a 33% drop in 2023 and an identical decline in 2024 to slash its revenue to about $9.5 billion. But some drug makers are prepared to offset losses. JP Morgan sees the upcoming patent cliffs in the mid-2020s as largely manageable as drug pipelines improve, and expects the biopharmaceutical industry sales to be roughly stable through 2030, analyst Chris Schott said in a note in December. Take Merck, Schott wrote in a January note that the company has made substantial progress in addressing its post-Keytruda patent expiration, adding that the company's post-2028 profile is looking increasingly attractive. During the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference earlier this month, Merck CEO Robert Davis said the company expects to have more than $20 billion in sales from oncology drugs by the mid-2030s, which is double the forecast the company provided during the same time last year. That improved outlook now includes 3 antibody drug conjugates, which target cancer cells and minimize damage to healthy ones, from the licensing agreement Merck inked with Daiichi Sankyo in October. It also includes Merck and Moderna's personalized cancer vaccine, which has yielded promising mid-stage data when combined with Keytruda to treat the most deadly form of skin cancer. The company also hiked its revenue outlook for cardiometabolic drugs to around $15 billion by the mid-2030s, up from a previous guidance of $10 billion. Davis noted that Merck views Keytruda's patent expiration as a hill, not a cliff, and is focused on making the dip as small as possible and the return to growth as fast as possible. Meanwhile, JP Morgan's Schott said shares of Bristol Myers Squibb had a challenging 2023, as new drugs ramped up slower than expected. But JP Morgan expects those new products, along with the drug maker's recent acquisitions and growing mid to late stage pipeline, will ultimately position the company for growth after upcoming patent expirations. For example, Bristol Myers Squibb acquired Karuna Therapeutics, which develops drugs for psychiatric and neurological conditions, for $14 billion in December. Meanwhile, Schott said he believes Johnson & Johnson is well positioned for healthy growth after Stelara's patent expires. The firm believes the company's pharmaceutical business can deliver mid-single-digit sales growth through 2030, he wrote in a December note. Johnson & Johnson's medical devices business is also becoming a bigger share of the company's revenue, which could help the company offset the Stelara patent cliff CFRA analyst Sel Hardy said. The business raked in roughly $30 billion of Johnson & Johnson's total $85 billion in 2023 sales. In addition to internal developments, companies will likely look for opportunities to acquire more drugs, particularly those in late-stage development that are close to entering the market, said Arda Ural, EY's America's industry markets leader in health sciences and wellness. The biotech and pharmaceutical industry is also starting the year off with about $1.4 trillion on hand to make deals, he added. Drug makers also have ways of buying more time. To avoid losing revenue, pharmaceutical companies are also moving to delay competition or extend patent protections on drugs. Merck is testing a new, more convenient version of Keytruda that can be injected under the skin rather than through intravenous infusion. If that new form is approved, it may land the company a separate patent and extend Keytruda's market exclusivity by several years. Bristol Myers Squibb is also testing a new form of Opdivo, which is currently administered into a patient's veins. A version that's injected under the skin showed promising results in a late-stage trial in October and could also lead to extended market exclusivity. Johnson & Johnson's strategy with Stelara is a bit different. In 2022, Johnson & Johnson sued Amgen over its plan to market a biosimilar for Stelara, saying it would infringe 2 patents for the drug. Johnson & Johnson confidentially settled that lawsuit in May, but will allow Amgen to sell its biosimilar of Stelara no later than 2025. A month later, Johnson & Johnson reached similar settlements with Alvotech and Teva Pharmaceuticals, which are also planning to launch a biosimilar of Stelara. Pharma is doing what they can to make sure that they squeezed the most they can out of these drugs before they open up widely. Mike Perrone, Baird's biotech specialist, told CNBC, but he noted that, while you can tack on some years and extend revenues, there's only so much time you can add. Also, Medicare drug price negotiations are now a significant factor. Medicare drug price negotiations under the Inflation Reduction Act are an additional threat to companies, but how the policy affects revenues could differ depending on when a drug loses exclusivity. Medicare is beginning price talks for the first round of 10 prescription medications this year. The talks include Stelara and Eliquis, along with a few other treatments facing patent expirations. By the fall, the federal government will publish the agreed-upon prices for those medications, which will go into effect in 2026. It's too early to know how much Medicare will be able to negotiate down prices, but some experts said lower prices in 2026 may have less of an effect on drugs already expected to see revenue decline as patents expire around the same time. For example, Stelara will lose exclusivity in the US in 2025. Still, he said the bigger threat to revenue for drugs, regardless of when they lose exclusivity, is competitors entering the market, not a new negotiated price with Medicare. Medicare price negotiation is a policy that allows Medicare, the federal health insurance program for seniors and people with disabilities, to directly negotiate the prices of prescription drugs with drug manufacturers. This policy aims to lower the cost of drugs for Medicare beneficiaries and taxpayers, as well as to increase access and affordability of medications. Currently, Medicare is prohibited by law from negotiating drug prices for its Part D program, which covers outpatient prescription drugs. Instead, private insurers and pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, negotiate with drug manufacturers on behalf of Medicare beneficiaries and receive rebates and discounts from the manufacturers. However, these savings are not always passed on to the beneficiaries or the taxpayers, and Medicare still pays higher prices than other countries or programs for many drugs. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, a historic law passed by President Biden in 2023, Medicare is now able to negotiate prices for up to 60 drugs covered under Part D and Part B, which covers drugs administered in doctors' offices and hospitals, such as cancer treatments. The law also sets a maximum fair price for each negotiated drug, based on the average price paid by other countries, and imposes penalties for drug manufacturers who refuse to negotiate or comply with the agreed price. The negotiated prices will also apply to other public and private payers, such as Medicaid and employer-sponsored plans, ensuring lower prices for all Americans. Medicare has announced the first 10 drugs selected for negotiation in 2023, based on the highest total spending in Part D. These drugs include treatments for diabetes, heart failure, blood clots, and cancer. The negotiations with the drug manufacturers will take place in 2023 and 2024, and the negotiated prices will go into effect in 2026. Medicare estimates that this policy will save $456 billion over 10 years for the federal government, and $158 billion for beneficiaries in the form of lower premiums and out-of-pocket costs. Medicare price negotiation is expected to have a significant impact on the drug market, the healthcare system, and the public health. It will reduce the financial burden and improve the health outcomes for millions of Medicare beneficiaries and other Americans who rely on prescription drugs. It will also increase the transparency and accountability of the drug pricing process and encourage more competition and innovation in the drug industry. But what do you think? Please hit the like button and leave us a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you are notified of upcoming videos when they are released. Please share this video on social media. And before we end, a word from the sponsor of this video. Today's sponsor is ProWorldNet.com. ProWorldNet.com is a job website specifically dedicated to licensed professions, doctors, including any type of specialty, nurses, and that includes all grades of nurses, lawyers, regardless of area of legal focus, teachers and professors, from kindergarten through graduate school, as well as any kind of job that requires a government license or certification. And ProWorldNet.com also includes short-term gig-type jobs as well. So be sure to check out ProWorldNet.com if you are looking for a job or an employee. Thank you for watching.